Welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics. Thank you for joining us on what has been a somber week in state politics. Representative Gretchen Branger, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Jane Duker, friend of the show, attorney, media extraordinaire, thank you.
Glad
Most
to be
active
here.
Twitter account and on probably the entire tweets.
Probably.
Scott Dickhouse, Republican strategist, former legislator, Franklin County. Welcome back, sir.
Thank you for having me.
And Representative Kathy Conway from across the river in St. Charles. This was a week that a lot of folks were hoping didn't have to happen, but the governor still being the governor, the House had to release their report. It was shocking revelations of violence, threats, domestic abuse. I mean, there were people that had set the expectations for this report. It would be so awful. I didn't think it would actually live up to those. It actually surpassed any expectations anyone could ever think. What was your reaction?
Well, I had a hard time reading it, and I had to keep going back to it. And I've read some reports in my life, having
you're an
been an investigator. And this was right up there with it, minus the shooting or stabbing. But I was just really, really shocked and disappointed in what I read. And in talking to a lot of my cohorts and friends, they pretty much felt the same way. Everybody had a hard time getting through it.
Jane Duger, there are some folks in some Republican circles that thought this governor, I mean, he knew what was in this report. There's been reports of copies of those unredacted depositions before the House committee being leaked to his law firm. I was a little surprised the governor stayed in office and made the state go through this.
Oh, I thought of anyone I would have been prepared for what was in that report, and I wasn't. And I was actually shocked at my reaction at how just how degrading and how sickening. It wasn't the sex, it wasn't the affair, it was the degradation of women. And that was just, I've just never seen it played out in that kind of detail. It was so disturbing. And to think that you're gonna let everyone go through this, that you're gonna, because you have to read it, you have to know what this, because he'll come out and say it's lies, and and it's disturbing, and the state should not have to go through this. Scott
Dickhouse, you're someone that's been somewhat critical of the governor, as have I, frankly. And while you'd heard things about this report, it was far more disturbing than anything I could have thought.
You know, the rumors and speculation about what had actually happened during that relationship have been flying around political circles since 2015 or 16. And I don't think that anyone, aside from the folks who were part of the deposition process or part of the committee, the investigative committee process, was prepared for what they read.
I met Eric Greitens at the Lincoln Days, which would have been into January, early February, or mid-February of 2015, right before he started doing these things. It's something in my gut question how you go from a tailored suit wearing Central West End Obama person to a jeans and work boots, a right winger, but I'm shocked at what came out.
I think since he came onto the scene politically, people have tried to kind of figure out who he was, what his core was, and some people have come away thinking that he was, just what he was on paper, that he's this brilliant man, that he's a Navy SEAL, he's a Rhodes Scholar, he's all of these things. He's a leader, he's someone who's going to fight. But some people have come away just kind of with an off feeling and just said, I just don't trust the guy. And I think those folks have been tremendously validated.
Representative, I mean, you're new to the legislative process. You picked a heck of a time to become to attend the legislature. But I mean, as a woman, as a man, it looked to me like a person that was somewhat of a predator taking advantage of a woman in a bad situation. As a woman, though, what did you take away?
I agree. I was shocked, as well as my colleagues when we were given the brief on the report. It was just disheartening, and it's disgusting. And the physical abuse and the mental abuse for that woman, it's horrible.
So the reaction I saw from Democrats was pretty swift. You've got a party that has a history of standing up for women in these situations. I thought the minority floor leader was very forceful in her comments and came pretty hard. But what I was surprised is before those comments came out, the governor made comments where he attacked this legislative committee, he attacked the House leadership. attacked the speaker, attacked, I guess it was everybody was picking on poor Eric Greitens.
That's exactly the way that it came out, and that's exactly untrue. I was shocked to hear him come up and say this is a witch hunt and that everybody's just out to get him. I mean, it's the facts. The facts are there in the report, and I think we need to look at those facts and continue on with what we found out.
Representative Conway, you have a background as a criminal investigator. You were one of the first people to smell the rat here and smell there was a problem and actually call for him to resign. I have to think part of you may have known what was in this report.
I think so. I think just the solemn attitude of the committee when we would see him on the floor and outside of the committee, I knew that this had to be bad. You know, my whole thing was I asked the governor to consider resigning because we already knew about some of the dark money things and all of this. There was only one person that knew everything about the affair, about the dark money, about this, about that, and he was it.
Let me ask you this, though. Is it normal for these types of men to, when these things come out, blame everyone else and try to turn it into somehow they're a victim?
Absolutely.
And Scott, because I have to say, I've been able to call a lot of what Eric Greitens did, and I suspected he would attack Representative Barnes
Sure.
or whoever. I was shocked at the attacks on just Todd Richardson, Rob Vescovo, Elijah Harr. I was surprised by that audacity.
And it was absolutely ludicrous. I mean, Todd Richardson has handled this as slowly and just with so much contemplation. He's tried to be measured. You know, I think the hope was when the governor had his press conference and was calling everybody out and calling a witch hunt or whatever, was that he could get everybody to back off, to not release statements. And I think the worst thing that happened to him was that they didn't bite, and instead they kind of banded together, realized how wrong this was, and then you saw some very forceful statements come out after the report was released, including the Attorney General, Josh Hawley's.
You know, Jay, they had a caucus at Farm Bureau, and some folks made the argument, maybe we wait till after session, maybe we do different things. You know, if you were not a fan of Eric Greitens and you thought he should go, I mean, his response in attacking the legislature, attacking the victim, attacking, well, everyone, and making it like he is some sort of victim in all of this.
He confirms what everybody's thinking. That's the problem. I mean, and it's just so textbook that the abuser comes out and wants to be the victim. And, you know, if anybody who has had any experience with women who've been victimized and been, you know, victims of assault and been victims of verbal abuse, I mean, it was textbook. It was, and he knew it. And the idea that a woman sobbing on the floor is someone who wants to have sex is, you just can't even get your head around it. And the idea that he would come out and think that people are just stupid. And he's in a delusional bubble that is very frightening. And so not only are these accusations and horrible, but his response to it is just as scary and frightening. And it's not changing. It's not getting better. Everyone knows what this is now. And the idea that we have to wait, he's entitled to not testify in criminal court. That's right. That is his absolute constitutional right. The people of Missouri have a constitutional right to have their representatives determine the fitness of this man to sit in that chair.
And the trial is about whether or not his iPhone was hooked up to the cloud at
Absolutely.
the time he was doing these
Absolutely.
things, not about whether he did
Absolutely.
these things.
And the idea that somehow you've had your chance. You have to decide, do you want to be a criminal defendant in which you are entitled to be quiet, or do you want to be governor? And do you want to talk? But he will not. The chances of him testifying are between less than 1% and nil. He is never going to testify. His only play is to attack this woman. And it's going to keep going and keep getting worse and keep getting more venomous as the walls start closing in on it. And let's not even mention mission continues and the other things that are being investigated.
We'll get to that in the next segment. Representative Conway, I have to say, I believe the man should have the most forceful criminal defense possible. I'm not a big believer in the government. I think he deserves every ability to hire this dream team of lawyers, and I think maybe if he's not in office, no one will give him the dark money to pay them. But I think he deserves to hire Johnny Cochran Jr. and all these people, right?
He does.
But I don't think the people of Missouri deserve to have him do those things and attack this victim while being the governor of their state.
You know, it's a fine line, and Jane kind of touched on it, that we have the criminal and we have the constitutional. Two totally different levels.
He's going on, and you have a background in law enforcement. He's going to be tried in whether he did these things while his phone was hooked up to the iCloud. Not
think
that, I mean,
that's probably
that's the element of
That's
the
an element.
trial.
Right.
And not all of these things,
Transition.
just whether or not he took a picture and it transmitted electronically.
transmitted it.
He's
But
not
that's
being
what the
tried.
trial's about,
He's
yeah.
not being tried at all on sexual assault or the things that he did verbally,
darn lucky
or
he
the
hasn't
fact that
been
he
indicted.
kept, a woman against her will when she was trying to leave in his basement. He's not being tried on any of that
So
currently.
when do you pass judgment on this? There's some talk that says you should finish session, which there's one trial date set for one of the things. Whether his phone was hooked up to the cloud is what his trial's about while he was doing these things. When do you think that the House should move and do their duty?
I think these are serious allegations. I think morally, how can he lead our state? How can he sign bills that we've passed? I mean, morally, I just can't even see how we can have that happen. I think that we need to take action now. I don't think there's a reason to wait.
Well, House Democrats set for him appointing members of the Ethics Commission.
That's just
I
ridiculous.
mean, I don't know. I mean, it's an honest question.
No, it's
what a
ridiculous.
quandary the state finds itself in.
Well, no,
because of his
now the
refusal.
Senate, they have to pass a bill to get around the fact that this man will not and should not be able to appoint people to the Ethics Commission. So now we have no functioning Ethics Commission in this state because we have a morally bankrupt predator as the head of the state.
During an election year.
Under
because
investigation,
of-
under indictment.
During an election year.
During an election
No
year.
ethics
It
was
commission.
so
Not to
bizarre.
mention our school board.
Right.
Right.
Blaming Jay Barnes' report when Jay Barnes didn't ask for this duty.
No.
Jay Barnes was the entire House voted 154-0 to ask this
And-
committee to do this. But let me ask you this: if you're a Senate Democrat, I agree. I see where their point comes from. There's nothing more important than this. Should the House get to work? And if so, I'm not a big fan of holding up all House bills. That seems to be counterproductive. But certainly, that would make some sense to me.
Well, I think, one, just looking at the investigation itself, at the beginning of the investigation, Governor Greitens and his attorneys said they welcomed any and all investigations, and they would all exonerate him.
And they would cooperate with the House.
It would cooperate, and that was at the beginning, and the result certainly was not to their liking. So now it's a witch hunt. In looking at how we proceed from here, I think it's a delicate balance. Representative, I think you're right. I think this is very serious circumstances.
Nothing more pressing in the state
No,
than that,
absolutely
honestly.
not. However, I do think that the trust and faith that has been put in Representative Barnes and Speaker Richardson and the leadership team probably should continue. And if they're saying they need more time to investigate, more time to put the evidence together, more time to talk to folks, I think that, I trust them. And I'd encourage folks to do the same.
Well, then convene the Disability Committee under the Constitution. There's a constitutional provision that allows the statewide
If
and
you're
other
going to do
people.
that, though, why don't you just step up and do what you're going to have to do at some point anyway?
Well, I mean, I
Is
understand.
this a question of if, it's a question of when? maybe?
I agree, but in the meantime, the business of the state ought to move forward.
The House did not go looking for this.
Nope.
But the Constitution
did
is
it.
written where this is their
Yes.
problem. If they decide to sign off on this, they can't lead the state either, can they?
That they can't.
The House can't lead the state either if they
Well,
decide
no,
to
if
sign
they-
off on this behavior.
Well, right, and I don't think they will. I really don't. When all is said and done, but in the meantime, there's work that needs to get done. There's things that need to happen. The budget.
Is there something more important than this?
No, that's
in the state right now?
No, there isn't.
We'll be right back. Let's talk. We come back about the fallout politically with different folks, and we'll be right back with This Week in Missouri Politics after this.
My name is Eric Philippi. I'm a veteran, a carpenter, and a father. When Eric Greitens said he was going to change politics as usual, folks like me didn't think the first thing he'd do as governor was take dead aim at our jobs and our families' livelihoods by working to repeal prevailing wage. Call Governor Greitens. Tell him to protect prevailing wage and to protect my family, not destroy it.
All across Missouri, our new car and truck dealers are building strong local economies. When you buy a car or truck in Missouri, you're helping to support over 20,000 Missouri families who rely on the auto industry for good-paying local jobs. You're also helping fund our communities, schools, first responders, and our roads because dealers generate millions of dollars in tax revenue. Missouri's automobile dealers have been the foundation of our communities for generations and for generations to come. The Missouri Automobile Dealers Association, the heart of Missouri.
At Ameren, Missouri, we know what light can do. It draws people together, and chases monsters away. And if you shine it in the right direction, it will light the path for the next generation, showing them what their tomorrow could look like, and spotlighting the possibilities that lay in front of them. Investing in our community by lighting the way forward. That's energy at work. Ameren, Missouri.
Welcome back to This Week in Missouri Politics. We are, last week, the report was released by the committee of the House on the governor's actions. We're discussing the political fallout now. It started Scott Dickhouse, Republican strategist. I think that, you know, whether people like it or not, there's definitely a political aspect to all of this. Certainly the governor's moves are clearly political in nature. Josh Hawley stepped up, and there's a U.S. Senate race that's cast against the backdrop when few in the executive branch had the wherewithal or maybe just the moral compass to address the situation. Josh Hawley waited minutes before he stepped up, called on the governor to resign. If you wondered whether or not this is the guy that could step in the ring against the titan of Missouri politics, Claire McCaskill, everything he's done the last few weeks has shown you that he is probably worthy of being a United States Senator.
No, I agree, and I was shocked. I mean, if there was one person who had an excuse or a reason to not have to issue a statement, it was Josh Hawley, because he's got his own active investigation going on into the governor right now. And when I read his statement that evening, Wednesday evening, I was blown away. I think it was kind of a game changer. A lot of the legislators had left Jefferson City by that point. And I think one of the things that I think is difficult for the legislators to understand is, you know, they're not lawyers, a lot of them. I mean, there are quite a few lawyers in the legislature, but a lot of them aren't lawyers, and they're tasked with, you know, looking at these laws and looking at impeachment and saying, does it meet this threshold? Does it meet that threshold? And Josh Hawley put out this statement and said, I believe there are absolutely grounds for impeachment. And I think for a lot of the Republican legislators, they're going to take that very seriously.
You know, Kathy Gilman, you've, I think through this, become somebody a lot of Republicans look up to as a bit of a moral compass inside the party. And I got to say, I was not a Josh Hawley supporter when he ran for office, but I have been wildly impressed with his ability to go against what I mean, you always look at people and you think, are you just the partisan hack, or are you the guy with the backbone? I don't think anybody can question the backbone of Josh Hawley today.
I think that Josh Hawley coming out and saying what he did, my goodness, it's horrible then. This is horrible. If the man who is our law enforcement agent in the state is telling the state this guy is impeachable, what does that say? I mean, to me, that speaks volumes. So,
Representative, the 6 million of us Missourians, we did go to the polls, and the ones that showed up voted to make, by a large margin, make Josh Hawley the Attorney General, the top lawyer in the state. I know there are issues of partisanship, but I mean, just as a leader, you had to respect his stance. When others were hiding under their desks, Josh Hawley was out front.
I agree, and I think it was a big step that he did, and that other folks have also made that same statement. I think that a resignation would be the best thing for our state. It would move things on quickly and stop dragging all this through the mud, the families, everybody that's involved, the legislature, everyone. If he would resign, I think that would be the best thing.
Jane Duger, I believe Claire McCaskill does a good job for the state of Missouri.
Absolutely.
I think she's a good legislator. She's an amazing politician. I disagree with her on some things, but I have a respect for Senator McCaskill, and I know that you do too.
Absolutely. And I still think she's going to win, but
and she could be the best person, but I think you have to give Josh Hawley some respect.
I do, and I have been very clear, very publicly, that every Republican that has stood up with courage, I applaud them. I thought it was a lot stronger of a statement than I thought, and I'm glad that he gave the legal guidance that he did, because I do think that helped some of the other members come out. And so that was
called leading.
It was strong, and I will say this: he needs to get moving on the mission. Continues. He's doing this investigation. He needs to substantively come forward with information so that people can make an evaluation as to whether he did something inappropriate with that nonprofit.
Kathy, let's talk about that for a minute. You have two political operatives. One, I think, Danny Lobb, somebody told me he's in Iceland or something. I'm sure that was a long planned trip, obviously. but you have the two people that list was sent to. It was sent to, the AP's reported, from the assistant of Eric Greitens. His assistant, Crystal Taylor, is listed as a witness. Now, I mean, if the AP report's true and the charity is steadfastly saying We didn't give it to you. You had no right to take our property and use it. The campaign saying we used it. There's a direct paper trail. I've always felt like Josh Hawley was going to step up and actually prosecute this, and I've seen no indication that he's not going to.
Well, he knows a lot more about it than I do. I have not seen the direct evidence. I don't know what the witnesses have told him, but I trust him, and I trust his abilities. And if he says there's something there, then I've got to believe there's something there.
There's nothing that Josh Hawley's done that makes you not trust him in the last couple of weeks, is there?
No, to this point, I think he's handled things very effectively, in a very forward fashion, a very honest fashion.
See, Drew, I'm not a lawyer. I mostly break laws. But
Everybody has their place.
I don't really know what, I mean, and I have no reason to think the AP report's not true, and the folks at the campaign have spoke publicly, they took the list and used it. That's what they were told to do. The assistant has an email train. I don't, and they're saying he had no permission to take it. Yeah. Either this assistant stole it or her boss did, Eric Greitens.
Absolutely, and he's the one that had access to it. I think we're going to see that. I think that's part of the reason the House.
This week thing.
Yeah, and I think the House is looking into that, and they should. And that is yet another problem. It's not just the problem with women that is so significant and horrific. There's just a lot of fundamental flaws here, and he is not capable of leading. And this is just another aspect of the problems. I mean, there's the dark money. There's so many aspects of this.
Let me ask you this, Representative. If it comes out and a Republican Attorney General does support filing charges on stealing this list, the mood in that chamber, do you think that comes to, well, we're not going to wait, we're not going to let some legalese, we're going to start cleansing the state? Do you think that's the tipping point that happens?
I think that will definitely be the tipping point. I mean, like you said, there's so many things. There's the school board, the ethics commission. I mean, it's just one thing after another. This whole, investigative committee with everything that's come out with that.
It's no badge of honor to be an Eric Greitens appointee to anything at this point. That's not something you want to go tell people.
Well, and I feel sorry for them. I feel sorry for the state employees. Sure. I mean, there are people running government, and they're good people. And, as someone who helped run government, the 50,000 people out there that are doing the job every day, it's hard. And it's hard enough. You don't get paid a lot. And to have your leader basically dragging you through the mud. He was on a photo op, and he, put state employees. I mean, what are they going to say? I don't want to be seen with you? I mean, they know how he reacts to people. I mean, he's bullied everyone in his path.
Yes.
And the idea that he thinks that anyone on the planet's going to believe that he didn't bully this woman, I mean, he is disassociated from reality.
Let's go back and listen to the John
Kathy
Bruner
Conway,
recording.
let's talk about the John Bruner recording. Let's talk about Ask Bill Eigel,
Right.
Ask Paul Whelan,
That's right.
Ask Denny Hoskins. I don't think anything he's done as governor is out of step with that. But Scott Dickhouse, if Josh Hawley comes in with Kim Gardner or however the legal minutia works, if he comes in and is part of an investigation that does this, is there anybody in the House that could say, no, we want to wait to cleanse state government till vacation or whatever?
Not anybody with integrity.
I mean, Representative, I don't know that their statement was, we're going to work with the House, until it wasn't. And I mean, I don't think even Eric Greitens supporters say he's a particularly truthful person. If they come out and they've said this is only that Kim Gardner and George Soros and all these evil villains have been picking on poor Eric Greitens, if a Republican Attorney General comes forward and he endorses an investigation and they file a criminal charge, is that the point? And if that's not the point, is there even a point ever?
Well, I think it would be. And there's only two of us here that may be faced with that vote. And I want to be clear, yes, I have disapproved of many things this governor has done from a moral standpoint, legal, but I'm able to separate my feelings from what our constitutional duty could be. And I will give him a fair shot.
Let's talk about some other folks in this. You've gotten to know Senator Mike Kehoe in your time in Jefferson City. He came out with a very forceful statement. I think his part is, think about your family, and the state should be bigger than one person. And I don't know that anybody, when I think of Missouri, I think of Senator Kehoe. I think he's probably the most honorable statesman that could utter those words, and he uttered them very eloquently about his family, about the good of the state, and made the point that no one is above, no one person or their ego is above the state. That seemed to sum up the mood of most legislators I know.
I agree. I thought his statement was excellent, and it's the image of our whole state. I receive phone calls from family and friends in other states. What's going on in Missouri? What is going on there? So it's the image of our state and all of the residents in our state, not just one person.
I thought Senator Kehoe summed up the mood. I think that, yes, Eric Greitens has treated people in a way where there is some schadenfreude about a situation. I don't think there's any doubt, and I think part of that's a reaction to the way he's treated a lot of people. But Senator Kehoe is not a schadenfreude guy. He's a statesman.
No, and you know what, it came through as honest and real, and that's where this is. I mean, I've not seen this much bipartisanship in a long time in the Capitol. That's the truth be told. When you wipe away all the press and all that, but people in the hall, these are all Missourians, they're human beings, and it's actually, in a warped way, taught people that, wait a minute, there's something more than all of this.
Do nothing more than look at the front page of any paper or even national news. I mean, Greitens has shamed the state and embarrassed it. But out of that could become some of that bipartisan, and good things could happen.
I hope. I mean, I think people want to get back to Democrats and Republicans arguing over ideas. I mean, the idea that we're purging corruption and scandal and nastiness and crimes. I mean, everybody agrees that's got to go, right? So let's get to it and get back to fighting about ideas again.
Scott Digos, you're a leader in the Republican Party. Obviously, I think your principled stands the last couple of years have elevated that. After this is over, though, it's time not to point fingers at people that didn't have the courage to stand up or were on the payroll somewhere. I think that's a time people have to come together, right?
Absolutely. And, you know, I think at the end of the day, I do think that via resignation, impeachment, I don't know, but I think at some point the governor is going to be held accountable. And at that point, you know, Governor Parson and his team, they're going to have to lead, and they're going to have to rely on a lot of people to lead.
And maybe the lesson of Eric Greitens is treat people with respect.
Absolutely.
Don't call them, cancel their vacations. Right. Don't call them corrupt if they're not.
Especially
maybe
when you're being
if he doesn't keep
hypocrite.
that lesson, though, this will be a program that checks Governor Parson.
Yeah, absolutely.
With a minute left, Representative, who won this week that maybe no one won?
I say the Special Investigative Committee. Those folks put in so much time giving up their spring break, their weekends. They really worked hard in getting that report together.
Who won the week?
I mean, it's impossible not to agree with that,
yep.
and I have to, because these people worked really hard. But I think Senator Kehoe, I think that made a big difference with people, just not only because of his position, but because of the person that he is. Yes.
Who won the week?
Jay Barnes is chairman of the committee, who kept everybody on point and headed in the right direction.
Who won the week?
Todd Richardson. I think just the approach that he had taken to all of this, you know, just the caution, being sure that everything was handled with the utmost integrity. I think it made allegations of it being a witch hunt, whatever, almost impossible to stick.
I'm going to say somebody that's a relatively newcomer to the main stage of Missouri politics. I'll say Representative Vescovo, the floor leader in the House. He was elected on a platform of toughness. You wondered if that meant just some Democrats or that meant real toughness and integrity. I think he's been tried by fire and shown that even while his opponents are hiding or obfuscating, he's led. I say he won the week. We'll see you next week on This Week in Missouri Politics. This Week in Missouri Politics, brought to you by Spire and Sterling Bank.